One morning, as Joseph K. awoke from troubled dreams, he found himself confronted with an envelope lying on his desk, its presence inexplicable and yet commanding immediate attention. It was not the sort of envelope one might expect to find casually discarded. It bore no markings, neither sender nor recipient, only a single sheet of paper inside, folded neatly into thirds. On the paper, written in an elegant but unfamiliar hand, were words that demanded compliance. "You are hereby summoned to appear before the tribunal." The phrase repeated itself twice more at the bottom, as though redundancy could lend it authority or clarity. Joseph K., a man known for his punctuality and precision, felt a strange mixture of disbelief and dread welling within him. He stared at the document for several minutes, hoping some hidden meaning would reveal itself under scrutiny, but it remained obstinately opaque. Around him, the room seemed unchanged, his clock ticking steadily, sunlight filtering through the blinds, but the envelope had transformed everything into something foreign, almost hostile. Was this a prank? A mistake? Or worse still, was it genuine? He rose from his chair and approached the window, seeking solace in the familiar sight of the street below. Yet even the world outside appeared altered, as if conspiring against him. Passers-by moved with purposeful indifference, their faces unreadable masks. None of them paused to glance upward. None acknowledged his existence. For a fleeting moment, Joseph K. wondered whether he had become invisible, erased from reality by some unseen force. Returning to the desk, he examined the envelope once more, turning it over in his hands, as though expecting answers to materialize upon closer inspection. There were no fingerprints, no tears along the edges, no evidence of tampering. It was perfect, unnervingly so. His mind raced through possibilities, each more implausible than the last. Could someone have entered his apartment during the night? Had he forgotten locking the door? Such thoughts only deepened his unease. At length, Joseph K. decided that action, however futile, was preferable to paralysis. He dressed quickly, donning his usual suit and tie despite the oppressive heat of the day. As he descended the stairs, he noticed Mrs. Gruber, the elderly woman who lived 2 floors below, sweeping her hallway. She greeted him with her customary curt nod, but today her expression seemed different, guarded, perhaps even accusatory. Did she know about the summons? Impossible, he thought, yet the suspicion lingered like smoke in the air. On the street, Joseph K. hailed a cab, instructing the driver to take him downtown toward the central offices where he worked. Along the way, his eyes darted nervously between the passing buildings and the crumpled summons clutched tightly in his fist. The cityscape blurred together in a haze of brick and glass, indifferent to his plight. At every intersection, traffic lights blinked red and green, their rhythmic alternation mocking his uncertainty. Upon arriving at his workplace, Joseph K. sought out Herr Mueller, a colleague whose penchant for gossip often proved useful in uncovering office secrets. "Have you heard anything unusual lately?" Joseph K. asked, attempting casualness. Herr Mueller frowned, scratching his chin thoughtfully before replying, "Only rumors, Joseph. Rumors of tribunals and summonses." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They say it's happening everywhere now." The news unsettled Joseph K. further. If others were receiving similar notices, then surely there must be some explanation, some rational framework governing these events. Yet the more he pressed for details, the less coherent the responses became. Each person he questioned offered fragments of information, piecing together a picture that defied logic. Some claimed the tribunal existed solely to punish wrongdoing. Others insisted it served no practical purpose beyond intimidation. One coworker suggested it wasn't real at all, merely a figment of collective paranoia. By midday, Joseph K.'s head throbbed with exhaustion. He retreated to his cubicle, sinking into his chair with a sigh. Before him lay stacks of files awaiting processing, their contents mundane compared to the mystery unfolding around him. Still, he forced himself to focus, hoping routine might anchor him against the tide of absurdity, threatening to overwhelm him. But try as he might, the summons continued to haunt his thoughts, its implications gnawing at the edges of his consciousness. As evening approached, Joseph K. realized he could delay no longer. Whatever this tribunal represented, he owed it to himself, and perhaps to others to discover its origins. Gathering his courage, he prepared to venture forth once more, determined to confront whatever awaited him beyond the confines of his ordinary life. Outside, the sky darkened prematurely, clouds gathering like witnesses to his impending journey, and somewhere far away, clocks began striking midnight, though it was barely 6 o'clock. The office hummed with its usual mechanical rhythm, yet Joseph K. could not shake the sensation that each clacking typewriter and rustling paper whispered secrets about his predicament. His colleagues exchanged glances when they thought he wasn't looking, their expressions veiled but unmistakably charged with unease. He tried to ignore them, focusing instead on mundane tasks, though even these felt tainted by the looming presence of the summons. Every envelope that crossed his desk seemed suspect, every signature scrutinized for hidden meanings. Herr Muller appeared at his cubicle later that afternoon, leaning conspiratorially close as if afraid the walls themselves might eavesdrop. "Joseph," he began, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial murmur, "you must find out more. This isn't just about Utes spreading." Joseph K. nodded absently, though internally he bristled at the implication that his situation was somehow part of a broader phenomenon. Wasn't it enough that he had been singled out? "I've heard whispers," Herr Muller continued, "of others who received similar notices. They vanish without explanation, leaving behind only questions." The finality in his tone sent a chill down Joseph K.'s spine. Vanish? What did that mean? And why did no one seem willing or able to provide answers? Later, during lunch, Joseph K. ventured into the cafeteria, hoping casual conversation might yield some insight. But the atmosphere there was equally stifling. Colleagues huddled together in tight clusters, speaking in hushed tones while casting furtive glances toward him. When he approached, conversations ceased abruptly, replaced by awkward silences or forced pleasantries. It was as though an invisible barrier separated him from the rest of the world, rendering him both observer and outsider. That evening, unable to bear the suffocating tension any longer, Joseph K. decided to seek answers outside the confines of his workplace. He visited old acquaintances, former classmates, even distant relatives, armed with the same question. Had they heard anything about the tribunal? Most responded with confusion or denial, brushing off his inquiries as paranoia. A few, however, hesitated just long enough to suggest they knew more than they were letting on. One such encounter occurred at a small cafe near the edge of town, where Joseph K. Calm ran into Frau Becker, a woman he hadn't seen since university days. She greeted him warmly enough, though her smile faltered slightly upon noticing the intensity of his gaze. "You look troubled," she remarked after ordering tea. Reluctantly, Joseph K.W.W. confided in her, recounting the events of the past few days. To his surprise, she didn't dismiss him outright. "There are things we don't talk about openly," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. "Things better left unspoken. But I'll tell you this much. The tribunal is real. Whether it chooses you or ignores you depends on factors none of us can control." Her cryptic response offered little comfort, yet it confirmed what Joseph K. had begun to suspect, that the summons was neither a prank nor a mistake, but something far darker and more insidious. As night fell, Joseph K. returned home, his mind reeling with fragments of information gleaned from scattered conversations. Each tidbit only deepened the mystery, painting a picture of a vast, shadowy organization operating beyond the reach of ordinary people. Yet for all its power, the tribunal remained frustratingly intangible, existing somewhere between rumor and reality. How could he fight against an enemy he couldn't see, couldn't name? Inside his apartment, he paced restlessly, staring at the offending envelope still resting on his desk. Its silence mocked him, daring him to act while offering no guidance. Sleep eluded him, replaced by restless imaginings of faceless judges seated in cavernous halls, deliberating over crimes he didn't remember committing. Guilt gnawed at him, not because he believed himself guilty, but because guilt itself seemed irrelevant in the face of such arbitrary authority. Finally, nearing dawn, Josef K resolved to take matters into his own hands. If the tribunal wouldn't come to him, then he would go to it. Armed with nothing but determination and perhaps a touch of desperation, he prepared to embark on a journey whose destination remained uncertain. Outside, the city stirred awake, oblivious to the storm brewing within one man's soul. For Josef K, however, there could be no turning back now. The following morning, Josef K arrived at the office earlier than usual, his mind preoccupied with the events of the previous day. His supervisor, a stern man named Herr Langenbach, greeted him with an expression that wavered between curiosity and apprehension. "Joseph," he began, motioning for privacy in his cluttered office. "I trust you've heard nothing unusual?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Josef K, caught off guard, hesitated before responding cautiously. "Unusual? No, Herr Langenbach. Why do you ask?" Herr Langenbach produced an envelope identical to the one Josef K had received, its pristine surface devoid of any identifying marks. He placed it on the desk between them, as though presenting evidence of some shared conspiracy. "This came yesterday," he explained, his voice tinged with frustration. "It seems we are not alone in this ordeal." Josef K stared at the object, feeling a strange kinship with his superior despite their otherwise formal relationship. Together, they pored over the document, searching for clues that might unravel its mystery. Hours passed without yielding meaningful answers. The more they examined the summons, the more elusive its purpose became. Every phrase seemed designed to obscure rather than clarify. Every detail carefully crafted to maintain ambiguity. At one point, Herr Langenbach suggested consulting legal experts, but even this practical suggestion faltered under scrutiny. Who could they trust? And how would outsiders react to such an incomprehensible predicament? By midday, rumors began circulating through the office corridors, whispered conversations punctuated by nervous glances toward Josef K's cubicle. Some speculated about secret investigations targeting disloyal employees. Others spoke of mass surveillance programs gone awry. Each theory added another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama, leaving Josef K. increasingly isolated from his colleagues. They treated him with a mixture of fear and pity, unsure whether to approach or avoid him altogether. In the afternoon, Josef K. retreated to the break room, hoping for solitude. Instead, he encountered Frau Schmidt, the office secretary, who approached him with trembling hands. She too had received a summons, though hers differed slightly, bearing a seal that neither Josef K. nor Herr Langenbach bore. Her revelation introduced yet another variable into the equation, complicating matters further. Was the tribunal a single entity, or did it splinter into factions, each operating independently? As the workday drew to a close, Josef K. found himself reflecting on the nature of authority itself. What gave these anonymous entities the power to summon individuals without cause? Why did people comply so readily, even when confronted with irrational demands? These questions haunted him as he packed up his belongings, preparing to leave the office behind for now. Outside, twilight settled over the city, casting long shadows across familiar streets. For Josef K, however, there was no respite, only the certainty that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new mysteries to decipher. Returning home, he replayed the day's events in his mind, piecing together fragments of conversation and observation. Each interaction revealed something new about the tribunal, while simultaneously obscuring its true nature. It was as though reality itself conspired against clarity, forcing him to navigate a labyrinth where every path led deeper into confusion. Yet amidst the chaos, Josef K. felt a peculiar sense of focus taking root within him, a determination to uncover the truth, regardless of the consequences. Before retiring for the night, he opened his window, letting cool evening air fill the room. Below, the city continued its ceaseless activity, oblivious to the turmoil consuming one of its inhabitants. Somewhere out there, the tribunal awaited, patient and implacable. And somewhere within himself, Josef K. knew he must prepare for what exactly remained uncertain. But preparation itself offered a fragile semblance of control. a fleeting illusion of agency in a world increasingly defined by uncertainty. Thus, as darkness enveloped the city, Josef K. resolved to face whatever lay ahead, armed with little more than resolve and the faint hope that understanding might eventually triumph over absurdity. The address etched into Josef K.'s memory led him to a dilapidated building situated in a neglected corner of the city, its facade cracked and stained with age. As he approached, the structure seemed to loom larger than it should, defying the laws of perspective, as though mocking his attempts to comprehend its purpose. The entrance yawned open like a mouth swallowing light, inviting yet forbidding. Steeling himself, Josef K. stepped inside, immediately enveloped by an oppressive stillness that pressed against his ears. Inside, the air carried the scent of mildew and dust, thick with the weight of countless forgotten years. Faint sounds echoed through the corridor's shuffling footsteps, murmured voices, the occasional cough or sneeze, all distant and indistinct, creating an atmosphere of perpetual unease. He wandered aimlessly at first, following labyrinthine passageways that twisted and turned without logic, leading nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Each room he entered revealed more of the same. Rows upon rows of desks piled high with papers, clerks bent over their tasks with mechanical precision, their faces obscured by shadows or indifference. As Josef K. moved deeper into the building, he noticed subtle changes in the environment. The walls grew darker, the lighting dimmer, until he could barely make out the outlines of objects around him. Time itself seemed distorted here. Minutes stretched into hours, days condensed into moments. Yet, despite this disorientation, Josef K. felt an inexplicable pull drawing him forward, urging him ever closer to some unseen center. Occasionally, he passed other individuals moving through the halls, all dressed identically in drab gray suits, their expressions uniformly vacant. None acknowledged his presence, though several paused briefly to glance at him before resuming their journeys. Eventually, Josef K.S. stumbled upon what appeared to be the heart of the operation, a vast chamber, filled with tables arranged in neat rows, each occupied by a figure diligently shuffling documents from one pile to another. At the far end of the room stood a raised platform, upon which sat a lone figure cloaked in black robes, its head bowed slightly as though deep in thought. This must be the Tribunal, Josef K. realized, though the revelation brought no clarity, only more questions. What was expected of him? Should he approach the robed figure, or wait for acknowledgement? Summoning his courage, Josef K. advanced toward the platform, his footsteps echoing loudly in the cavernous space. Every eye in the room followed his progress, though none offered assistance or guidance. When he finally reached the base of the platform, he hesitated, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. The robed figure tilted its head upward, revealing a face obscured by shadow. Its voice, when it spoke, was neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but rather a composite of all possible tones, resonating directly within Josef K.'s mind. "You have come," it stated simply, though the words carried an undercurrent of accusation. "Do you understand why?" Josef K. opened his mouth to reply, but found himself unable to articulate a coherent response. Instead, he shook his head, feeling the weight of his ignorance settle heavily upon his shoulders. The figure nodded slowly, as if this admission were both expected and inevitable. "Then you shall remain here," it continued, "until such understanding is achieved." Before Josef K. could protest, the room began to shift around him, the walls melting away to reveal endless corridors stretching in every direction. The robed figure dissolved into darkness, leaving him alone amidst the chaos. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but he forced himself to breathe deeply, focusing on the present moment. Somewhere ahead, he knew, lay answers if only he could find them. Hours or perhaps days passed as Josef K. navigated the endless maze, encountering strange sights along the way. In one corridor, he discovered a door labeled Truth, though opening it revealed only mirrors reflecting his own bewildered expression. Another led to a chamber filled with clocks ticking backward, their hands spinning faster and faster until they blurred into motionless circles. Still, he pressed onward, driven by a stubborn refusal to surrender. At last, he arrived at a small, unassuming room containing a single chair and a table bearing a single sheet of paper. On the paper, written in familiar handwriting, were the words, "You are free to leave." Relief washed over Josef K, though tempered by lingering doubt. Was this genuine liberation, or merely another illusion crafted by the tribunal? Uncertain but unwilling to linger further, he took the paper and turned back toward the exit, his steps lighter now, though his mind still burdened with unanswered questions. The robed figure emerged from the shadows, its presence commanding yet inscrutable. "Josef K," it intoned, though whether as a question or statement remained unclear. The voice carried an unsettling resonance, as if spoken by many mouths at once. Josef K, rooted to the spot, struggled to formulate a reply. His mind raced through possible explanations for his presence, each more implausible than the last. Finally, he managed a hesitant, "I received a summons." The figure tilted its head slightly, as though evaluating the adequacy of this response. "And do you know why?" it asked, its tone neither accusatory nor sympathetic. Josef K shook his head, feeling the weight of his ignorance like a physical burden pressing down upon him. "No," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure seemed to consider this admission before continuing. "Guilt," it declared simply, "is not always tied to action. Sometimes it resides in thought, in intention, in the very essence of being." This pronouncement left Josef K reeling. Guilt without action? It defied logic, yet somehow resonated with the unease that had haunted him since receiving the summons. He opened his mouth to protest, to demand clarification, but the figure raised a hand, silencing him. "Do not seek absolution here," it warned, "for what cannot be named cannot be forgiven." These words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. As Josef K grappled with their meaning, the room began to shift imperceptibly. Shadows lengthened and twisted, forming shapes that danced just beyond comprehension. The clerks surrounding them continued their ceaseless labor, oblivious to, perhaps complicit in the surreal transformation occurring before Josef K's eyes. He turned back to the figure, desperate for some anchor amidst the chaos, only to find it regarding him with an expression both compassionate and detached. "You ask for answers?" the figure said, its voice softening slightly. "But answers are rarely satisfying. They bind us to certainty, when uncertainty is the true nature of existence." Josef K felt a surge of frustration rising within him. Was he meant to accept such ambiguity without resistance? Yet even as he questioned, part of him recognized the truth in the figure's words. Certainty was a fragile construct, easily shattered by forces beyond control. Time itself seemed distorted within the tribunal's domain. Minutes stretched into hours, days condensed into fleeting moments. Josef K lost all sense of duration, existing solely in the present momenta, moment defined by tension, anticipation, and growing awareness. The figure observed him silently, waiting for some internal breakthrough that Josef K could not yet perceive. Around them, the endless corridors whispered secrets, their voices blending into a chorus of half-formed thoughts and forgotten memories. Eventually, the figure gestured toward the exit, breaking the spell that had held Josef K captive. "You may leave," it announced, though the declaration carried no promise of resolution. "But remember, freedom is not absence of constraint. It is the ability to endure constraint without surrendering identity." With these enigmatic final words, the figure dissolved into shadow, leaving Josef K alone in the cavernous chamber. He hesitated briefly, glancing around one last time at the tableau of bureaucratic absurdity surrounding him. Then, with a mixture of trepidation and resolve, he stepped toward the door. As he passed through its threshold, the building behind him shifted and warped, becoming something else entirely, or perhaps revealing its true form for the first time. Outside, the city awaited, unchanged on the surface, but altered irrevocably in Josef K's perception. Somewhere far away, clocks continued ticking, marking time for those who dared to question their place within its relentless march. Yet even as Josef K walked away from the tribunal, he knew he would never escape its influence. Its lessons lingered within him, shaping his thoughts and actions in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. Freedom, guilt, responsibility, these concepts intertwined in complex patterns, defying simple definitions. And so, with each step forward, Josef K. moved deeper into the labyrinth of human existence, seeking understanding while knowing full well it might forever elude him. The city streets blurred together as Josef K. made his way home, their familiarity now tinged with strangeness. Faces passed by, indistinct and transient, each carrying their own burdens hidden beneath polite smiles or neutral expression. He wondered how many others bore summonses in their pockets, unaware or unwilling to confront the implications. Perhaps the tribunal operated invisibly throughout society, influencing lives in ways too subtle to detect. Reaching his apartment, Josef K. closed the door behind him and leaned against it, drawing a deep breath. The solitude should have been comforting, yet it only amplified the lingering unease. On his desk, the original summons lay untouched, its presence a reminder of events still unresolved. For all his efforts, he had gained little clarity, only fragments of insight that raised more questions than they answered. As night fell, Josef K. sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Below, the world continued its ceaseless activity, oblivious to the turmoil consuming one of its inhabitants. Somewhere out there, the tribunal waited, patient and implacable. And somewhere within himself, Josef K. knew he must prepare for what exactly remained uncertain. But preparation itself offered a fragile semblance of control, a fleeting illusion of agency in a world increasingly defined by uncertainty. Thus, as darkness enveloped the city, Josef K. resolved to face whatever lay ahead, armed with little more than resolve and the faint hope that understanding might eventually triumph over absurdity. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting striped patterns across Josef K.'s face as he awoke. His dreams had been fragmented, a jumble of corridors and shadowy figures that dissolved upon waking, leaving behind only a vague residue of unease. He rose slowly, his movements deliberate, as though afraid that haste might disturb the fragile equilibrium of his thoughts. The apartment felt smaller than usual, its walls closing in like the confines of the tribunal's labyrinth. Josef K. approached the desk where the summons still rested, its surface unmarred by time or handling. Picking it up, he examined it once more, searching for some detail he might have overlooked. Yet the document remained as inscrutable as ever, its words repeating their demand with mechanical precision. Setting it down, he turned toward the window, drawn instinctively to the outside world. The cityscape greeted him with its usual indifference, yet beneath the veneer of normalcy lay an undercurrent of tension, a sense that something fundamental had shifted. Dressing quickly, Josef K. descended to the street below, his footsteps echoing faintly on the pavement. Around him, life proceeded as before. Vendors called out their wares, commuters hurried along their paths, and children played with careless abandon. Yet each scene seemed tinged with irony, as though reality itself mocked his predicament. He entered a cafe, ordering coffee without tasting it, his mind preoccupied with the tribunal's cryptic pronouncements. Guilt without action? Responsibility untethered from choice? These concepts resisted comprehension, slipping through his grasp like water through clenched fists. Returning home later that afternoon, Josef K. found himself retracing familiar patterns of thought. Had he truly confronted the tribunal, or merely glimpsed one facet of its vast complexity? Its warnings lingered within him, shaping his perceptions while offering no clear resolution. Freedom, it had said, was not the absence of constraint, but the capacity to endure it. Such definitions defied conventional logic, challenging the very foundations of his understanding. As he paced the confines of his apartment, these ideas circled endlessly, seeking purchase but finding none. Evening brought no respite, only deeper introspection. Josef K. sat at his desk, pen in hand, attempting to commit his thoughts to paper. Words emerged haltingly, disjointed fragments that refused cohesion. "What is guilt?" he wrote, then crossed it out, replacing it with "Who defines guilt?" Only to strike that too, dissatisfied with its inadequacy. Each attempt revealed the futility of language in capturing such elusive truths. Outside, twilight settled over the city, softening edges and blurring distinctions. Within, however, clarity remained elusive, obscured by layers of doubt and uncertainty. As night deepened, Josef K's focus shifted inward, toward memories long buried beneath routine and obligation. Childhood fears resurfaced, mingling with adult anxieties, creating a tapestry of apprehension that stretched backward and forward simultaneously. He recalled moments of hesitation, decisions left unmade, opportunities abandoned, all potential sources of guilt, however remote. Yet even this self-examination offered no relief, only further questions. Was guilt inherent, woven into the fabric of existence, or was it imposed, a construct of external forces masquerading as internal conviction? Sleep eventually claimed him, though rest eluded. Dreams returned, more vivid now, populated by faceless judges and endless corridors. Their persistence suggested continuity between waking and dreaming states, blurring boundaries until both became indistinguishable. Upon awakening, Josef K. found himself uncertain whether he had truly slept or merely transitioned into another realm of consciousness. The distinction mattered little. What endured was the awareness that his journey was far from complete. Morning light again bathed the room, signaling the beginning of another day, or perhaps the continuation of the same. Josef K. rose, dressed, and ventured forth. Driven by a compulsion he could neither explain nor resist. The city awaited, unchanged yet transformed, its streets pathways leading inevitably back to the tribunal. For despite everything, Josef K. knew he would return, not because he sought answers, but because the questions themselves demanded attention. And so, stepping into the sunlight, he prepared once more to confront the unknown, armed with nothing more than resolve and the faint hope that understanding might eventually triumph over absurdity.